Alright guys, finally getting back to the videos. Sorry it took me so long. So I'm going to do a quick video on basically the stuff that I learned while learning how to steelhead fish, basically. So there's I ran into a lot of problems when I moved out here about 6 years ago now. I've heard my entire life that I wanted, steelhead was the most elusive trout species in the Americas. So it's one of those fish that was always on my bucket list, I guess you could say. When I came out here, my wife and I sort of just jumped right into it, one of the winters when we were here. And I gotta say, I struggled a lot. And I would run into people out there fishing, and I'd ask them questions, and then I would basically apply the things that they told me, try that, and came to find out that for some reason there's like this huge misinformation thing going on with fishing. A lot of people I noticed would just purposely mislead people who would ask them questions. I don't know whether they think that it's going to make them catch more fish or what, but I absolutely despise this. So one of the things that I do is when I see somebody struggling, I may give them pointers, or if somebody asks me something, I tell them everything that I know on the topic. I'm not a professional. I don't do this for a living. This is just what I love to do. And the things that I tell people are the things that I've tried through trial and error, or whatever the case may be, and I've found them to be effective. One of the most important things, well, the two most important things I've found with steelhead fishing is, one, you need to be thorough with your bait presentation all the time, because steelhead or rainbow trout, they have excellent vision, extremely good spatial reasoning. They can, a trout can see a fly flying just above the water and adjust its trajectory to intersect with the flying insect after it comes out of the water. So all of this stuff represents an innate ability for problem solving and an extremely good acute vision, and they're just very, very, very well adapted to the environments that they live in. And it all boils down to that they are the masters of the environment that we are trying to catch them in. So bait presentation, and then basically just a rough idea of what the fish's habits are, being able to look at the water and seeing the areas where you may want to focus more of your attention than other areas. And all these things can increase the odds of you catching one. But I will say this, that 90% of the steelhead that I get an opportunity to catch, I don't land, either from gear failure, like break a line off or something, I had a scuff I didn't see, or the other thing is that these are extremely active fish. When you hook into one, a lot of times they are out of the water. They're flying through the air, flipping around, shaking their heads. They they won't shy away from running for cover. Like if there's some timber or some logs or rock overhangs, they will dart for cover. They will go nose first into the rocks and gravel and rake their heads into it, trying to shake the hook. They'll come out of the water and shake their head and shake a hook loose. They will just extremely acrobatic, extremely athletic. They're very strong fish. I've been spooled by a steelhead going up rapids before, just to get halfway up and decide to turn sideways and use the water's current to push it down the other way, and get slack in the line, and then, or it's just they're very, very big fights most of the time, and they're just very difficult to catch. So another thing too is that they can see, like I said, they can see really well. So one of the things I noticed is that you have to be able to see the read the water conditions, like I was saying, and know what gear you need to apply to those conditions. Like, generally for steelhead on my leader lines, there is no instance that I can come up with where I will use larger than 17-pound fluorocarbon at the largest, and that's only when the water's really dirty and it's really heavy water. That's what I'll use then. I mean, my main line, if I'm running braid or something on my bait caster, I may have 30-pound braid, but that's my main line, not my leader line. In most cases, if there's any clarity to the water, I probably have 8 or 10-pound leader on there, and even that they can still see a lot of times. So I've had steelhead come for my bait, and I can see them going for it, just to get close to it, and think, I guess something's not right with that, and then I'll just kind of turn or go the other way. This happens a lot, and most of the time you don't see them at all. I mean, every once in a while you can sight fish for them. There's some in there because you saw one there, so you keep hitting that spot over and over and over again. But the majority of the time, you're never going to see them. If they're sitting still in the water and you don't have a really broadside view of them, they're invisible. Their body is adapted. They have predators like eagles or hawks or bears, whatever. Like all of these animals have way better vision or senses than we do, and they've adapted to protect themselves from those. So just keep that in mind. Just because you're at the store and you get some 25-pound line and it says vanish or invisible, that does not make it invisible in the water under any circumstances. There are some that will appear less, will stand out less in the water than others, but they are not invisible. It's a marketing tactic, so just keep that in mind whenever you're picking your gear. So what I'm going to do in this video is, real quick, I'm going to go over a few rigs that I use the most, and the first one is a slip float. So I have this would here would be my main line. This is a heavy 25-pound mono. I'm just using it for visual purpose. I would never use this. So basically, you'd have your main line, bring it down, you'd run one bead, or actually, I'm sorry, I almost missed the most important step, because you'd have to start over if you forgot this. You're going to need a bobber stop or a knot stop or something like that. You put it over your main line first. I like these rubber ones. You can get them at Walmart, wherever. And generally what I would do is I'll put a rubber one on, and then I'll use a knot stop, like everybody's seen them, those little green or pink little knots you slide over it and you pull them tight. One thing I hate is as the day goes on, if you haven't broken your line or retied several times, your bobber stops will weaken and they'll start sliding. You'll be drifting through somewhere and your bait will just tick. It'll tick the bottom or something like that, and your float will go down a little bit, and as it goes down, it pulls your bobber stop up. Next thing you know, you got your bobber stop way up your main line, and you got 10 feet of leader down, dragging on the bottom, getting hung up. So I use double. And then after you get the bobber stops on, you're going to do one bead. Generally for this bead, I will use the smallest bead I have. So just something to that'll stop it at the top of the bobber and won't let your knot go up inside of the bobber. And then you would put your bobber on, and then you would do another bead. I use a larger bead on this one, not too large, because this will stand out in the water even though you have a leader below it. If this is swinging through the water and it looks like an egg or something like that, they may go for the bead, and you don't want them to do that because there's no hook there. And then after the bead, I use a barrel swivel. Depending on the water conditions, I may use a double locking swivel on here and tie my main line or my leader line to the eyelet. And then if I have to add weight to my setup to get it down faster in rougher water, then I would have that clasp there to hook a weight to, or you can do a weight in line with it. There's just any application would work, just however you're rigging it. So basically that would be that. That's a slip setup. This is what I'm used most commonly, because there's so many adaptations you can do to this. You can pretty much use any presentation you want with this, as long as it sinks, or you can make it sink. So once you have that, you would that would be on attached to your main line. Then you would have a leader. Here I have one I tied up. It's just a a general idea. What I did on this one is I just got a little octopus hook, tied it to my my leader line, threw 2 glass beads on there, and I have this little tube fly thing I made for salmon fishing this year for coho, and it's basically an egg pattern, is what it is. So then you would have like this, and if you needed to, you could add weight to it. I used the glass beads; they're kind of heavy; they do sink. So this could be something that you could use, and then you could drift fish that. You throw it out, and then it would drift by. And if you pass the fish, then and it entices them, then they would go for it. One of the most commonly used steelhead baits that I've seen in my entire time out here fishing, which is, it's only been a couple years, but it is a jig head, and these little worms, little rubber worm. They have all different types of colors. I think I have like maybe 20 colors or 15 colors. I don't even know how many I have, because I keep an abundance of colors, because I'm not getting any attention on this doesn't mean I won't get attention on this, And this jig head is it's a 1/0 hook. You want a good stiff hook. You want good penetration. They have pretty hard mouths, So basically, you would just tie the jig to your leader line, then you would run this down and try to just make a the most natural appearance that you can. Try not to have it all scrunched up, looking weird. But then you would drift fish that, and you throw your bobber wherever you're going, and let it drift through there and try it. Basically you want to methodically fish these things, because steelhead aren't going to run your bait down the river. They're not going to chase it for a long distance, because they're not going to exert all that energy on something that they may not even get. So it really needs to pass by them closely. It needs to be at the proper presentation, so it doesn't need to look all weird, and as it passes them, if you entice them, they'll take it. There's steelhead, like I said, they're rainbow trout, so there's so many applications that or baits that you could use for them. Don't shy away from using flies. One of the things I struggled with when I came out here was, I'm a bass fisherman at heart, so I was always, I just couldn't get past that big flashy baits, stuff like that. That's not always going to work, for steelhead. You could use a little tiny streamer fly like this. It's just a hook with some tinsel and a little feather at the top with some black thread, and a little bit of streamer down, or tinsel down here, and you can use that. They'll go for that. Actually, I've caught one this year on this exact pattern right here. Yarnies, this is something that everybody who fishes out here has used. Use it for salmon and trout, just little trout in the rivers. Steelhead will eat them too. If you got the proper presentation and they're in the area, and it passes by them, they might just suck it down. This is some that I saw these at one of these at a store one time, and I pretty much just tie my own now. It's a little jig head with no hook on it. Then I tie a string and some beads and a small hook at the bottom, a little feather. You can even put a couple single eggs on it, and drift fish that if you're into using bait. Generally, I don't use real bait. I'm more of an artificial fisherman. I like the challenge, I guess. Just a little jig that I threw together with some yarn, or some hackle I had left over, and a piece of yarn, and it's just like a crappie, a large crappie jig, just the regular jig heads that I showed you for the worms. They come in all different colors. I actually I paint my own. I make my own. Generally, I try to make my own baits. I found that I enjoy making, trying to come up with a pattern that is going to entice a steelhead, and then catching one with it. It's almost as addictive to me as the tug is. So now that we've gone over a few of the bait presentations, this is all for drift fishing right here that I just showed you, but every one of these applications can be used on the bottom as well. If you're in faster water, it's drift bouncing. You would take Let's see here. So if you wanted to get this down into deeper water and drift fish it, you could attach this. That you could just run a swivel down to your main line, put like a rubber bouncing weight or a stick weight on it, tie this onto one of the other ends of the eyelet on the swivel, maybe throw a little corky on there to keep it out of the rocks a little bit, and throw it out, tighten your line up just like when you salmon fish, drift bounce it, boom, 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 let it go through there. When it stops, set the hook. It's either a snag or a fish. So you know, that's generally the two methods that I stick to the most. And one of the other things I wanted to go over real quick before I end this video and it gets too long, I was talking about bait presentation. Bobber orientation I found is super important with these fish. You want your bait to be, you know, in the right position. You know, you don't want, you know, these fish know that most of the things they eat can't swim against the current. So if your bait's like way up here like this, swinging in the current, then it doesn't look right to them. So you generally want it to be, you know, drifting along the current. Dunk, 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 dunk. So the way you do that is you try to keep your bobber straight up and down as much as possible. There's several things that, you know, the indicators that will help you to see whether you're too shallow or too deep. If your bobber is pointed downriver like this, that means that your bait is set too deep and it's dragging on the bottom behind. If your bobber is pointed, you know, this way, then that would mean that there's conflict, you know, different speeds of current in the water. So if your bait is set too shallow, the lower current might be a little bit faster, closer to the bottom, so it's picking your bait up and your bobber is swinging like that. So one of the things you're going to want to do, mend your line as much as you know, as often as you need to keep your bobber up and down and not dragging your line sideways in the water. When you mend your line, try not to move your bobber around a lot. When you do that, that's all noise that could disturb fish, and you know, so mend your line. You know, you pick it up a little bit and just pull it over. You know, just try to keep your bobber up and down as much as possible. Adjust your depth as necessary. The other thing I wanted to get to real fast is, I was talking about it before, learning to, you know, learn the fish's habits. Generally, these fish are not going to spend the entire day in the middle of the river where the current is the strongest. So what I like to do is, I like to fish the edges, the back flows, the soft spots, current seams. This is the areas where I focus my attention the most, because this is where the fish are generally going to be at. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form to ignore the rest of the water, because you know, there could be a fish there and eat too. You know, they could be one moving up the river. You know, it could be right in the middle of the current, just going at it, and if something passes by it, it might open up and eat it. So, you know, try to fish the areas where, when I say soft spots, it means like if you look out at the water and you see all the water's rippling, you know, it comes around these rocks, and then this part right here is smooth, you know, and then the current's moving along the side of it. That's a soft spot. You know, some places that current may create an eddy or backflow like that. The river may be flowing this way. Generally, the steelhead will face the current. In a backflow, they may be facing the other direction. So, you know, don't forget about that. You know, if you throw it up here in the backflow and bring it to you this way against the current, you may just be coming up behind them, and they won't take it. So, if there's a backflow and the water is flowing a different direction, don't forget to try both directions. Like I said before, they enjoy cover. You know, run your bait next to a log or a log jam or something like that. If the water's high and heavier, they may be, you know, like say there's a rock poking out of the water like this and the river's flowing over top of it like that. That may be the spot where they're tucked in at, you know, just resting. You know, they're like, these are the things you need to think of. Think about the soft spots. Focus your attention there. Soft spot means that it's an area where that they can rest, you know, or hold and be in a holding position, and not fighting the current as much as they would if they were in a different spot. They enjoy cover. They enjoy overhangs, rock overhangs, and just because the water is shallow does not necessarily mean that they're not there. You know, sometimes I'll walk up to the river and I just see a fin poking out of the water, you know, and then it's in 8 inches of water or something like that. You know, that they go everywhere. They go up into small creeks, they go into big rivers, they go deep, they go shallow. they're all over the place. So, you know, this is hopefully I enlightened you guys a little bit on this video. It's hard to decide content in these things. There's just so much information, so many different scenarios. You know, this river that this person's fishing at may be 100% different than this one. You know, I've noticed patterns with the fishes, you know, the things that the foods they prefer at different rivers and different places. You know, like East Fork, you know, a lot of times I'll fish tiny little flies, you know, swing a nymph or something like that with my fly rod. You know, at the Washougal, a lot of times they want bigger baits. Last weekend I got a buck, and I got it on, I had a tandem rig. I had a streamer fly on the bottom and a smaller jig in the top, and when I got the fish, he took them both. You know, my float was going through a shallower area. I looked away for a second, turned my head back, and I saw the fish come out from the deep. Got to where my bait was, and it kind of just went down, got the lower one, and boom, got the top one. Both of them in the mouth. When I set the hook, there was one on each side of its mouth. Wasn't getting away. Needless to say, it was a keeper, and it's in my freezer now. So I'll do some more videos, guys. I'll try to cover as much information as I can. Brandon, you know, next time you see me out there, man, or send me a message, I'll take you out and show you some of this stuff in person. I'm sorry I didn't get your name, the guy at Salmon Creek today, but you know, you ever see me out there, there's lots of people out here who know I am not shy about sharing my information. You know, I even show you my spots. It's all public land, guys. It's not yours, so you know what? Why would you try to hide it? So anyway, you know, send me a message, guys, if you want something else. I'll try to think of, you know, more things to discuss in detail. Like I said, it's kind of hard deciding what's most important, because honestly, it's all important. So go get a line wet, guys. Later.